Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive today into a role that's, well, absolutely central to keeping the financial world operating safely, the money laundering reporting officer, or MLRO.
That's right. It's a really critical position, and it carries significant personal accountability. It sits right at that intersection of, complex regulations and, frankly, real-world financial crime threats.
Yeah, and we've gathered some source material that really gets into the weeds on this role, what exactly an MLRO is, what they do sort of day to day.
And the huge regulatory expectations they're under, the challenges too. It's a demanding job.
Definitely. So our mission here is to sort of cut through that complexity, pull out the key takeaways from what we've read, and really help you understand why this one individual, this MLRO, is seen as such a cornerstone.
A cornerstone in that global effort to stop illicit funds, dirty money, from getting into the legitimate financial system.
Exactly. Why is just one person so important? Well, they're like the designated gatekeepers, aren't they? Often the final decision maker in really critical moments.
They are bridging that gap between the complex rule books and the often messy reality on the ground.
So let's explore what that actually looks like.
Okay, so at its most basic level, the MLRO is the specific person within a financial firm who's formally appointed, designated to oversee the company's defenses against money laundering.
Right. Their main job, as the sources point out, is basically steering the ship when it comes to AML, anti-money laundering, and also CTF, counterterrorism financing.
And the core purpose, really, is ensuring the firm is playing by the rules, following AML regulations, making those critical judgment calls about suspicious activity.
Deciding what needs reporting.
Exactly. And embedding those AML policies and procedures deep within the organization. The sources actually call them a key figure in preventing money laundering.
And that key figure status, it comes with real seniority, real authority. They're usually a senior person in compliance.
Yeah, and they hold direct accountability, personal accountability often, for making sure the firm meets all its AML and CTF obligations. It's definitely not some junior role tucked away somewhere.
Okay, so what does that senior level accountability mean in practice, like day to day?
Well, first, it starts with managing the information flow inside the company. They're the ones who receive and have to evaluate the internal suspicious activity reports, the SARS.
Those are the flags raised by employees.
That's right. When someone sees a transaction or activity that just feels off, doesn't look right.
Wow, that must be a huge amount of information to sift through. And then comes the really critical decision, right?
Yes, taking those internal flags, those internal SARs, and deciding if they meet the threshold to be escalated outside the firm.
To the national authorities.
Precisely, to the National Financial Intelligence Units, or FIUs. The sources mention examples like the NCA, the National Crime Agency here in the UK, or FinCrime over in the US.
And the MLRO is the one who has to make that final call and actually submit the report if it's needed.
Correct. And that whole process, it demands really meticulous record keeping. They have to keep accurate, complete records of all those SARs, internal and external.
And make sure any external reports go out on time, meeting strict deadlines.
Absolutely. But it's broader than just handling reports. They're also responsible for the overall health of the firm's AML and CTF systems, meaning they need to constantly monitor and improve the controls. Things like transaction monitoring systems, the software looking for weird patterns,
Okay.
customer due diligence, the know your customer or KYC processes, and the basic risk assessment frameworks the firm uses to figure out its weak spots.
And they advise upwards too, like to the board.
Yes, they have to.
Yeah.
They need direct access to the board, to senior management, to keep them informed about the financial crime risk the firm faces and any changes in regulations they need to know about.
Plus, overseeing training sounds vital, making sure everyone in the company knows how to spot suspicious stuff and report it internally.
It's absolutely critical, and the role demands independence. The sources really stress this. The MLRO needs enough seniority, enough authority to make tough calls, maybe unpopular calls.
And be free from conflicts of interest.
Crucially, yes. Their judgment can't be compromised.
Which leads us neatly into the regulatory side, because the regulators put immense pressure, huge accountability on this specific role.
They really do. Around the world, regulators see the MLRO as the focal point, the key person responsible for AML compliance within a firm.
So in places like the UK, under the money laundering regulations, or across the EU with their AML directives, the MLRO is held to a very high standard, personally accountable.
Definitely. And what do regulators expect? Well, first off, they expect demonstrated competence, real expertise in financial crime prevention.
Exactly. And that access to senior management we mentioned, that's not just nice to have, it's a regulatory expectation. They need to be in the room of influencing decisions.
Making sure AML risks are actually considered when big business decisions are made.
Right. And here's something the sources really highlight. The MLRO isn't just on the hook for submitting SARs externally.
They also have to maintain clear, solid justifications for deciding not to report something that was flagged internally.
Wow, okay. That's a heavy responsibility. Documenting why you didn't act.
Think about it. If something blows up later, regulators or law enforcement might come asking why that transaction wasn't reported. The MLRO needs proof they assessed it properly at the time and had good reasons for their decision.
Yeah, that really underlines the weight of every judgment call.
It does. And naturally, they're the main contact point for regulators and law enforcement dealing with inquiries, audits, investigations.
And if they mess up, if they fail to discharge these duties properly.
The consequences can be severe. We're talking potential enforcement actions, big fines for the firm, and yes, even personal liability for the MLRO themselves.
Which is likely why this role is so central to implementing a risk-based approach to AML. That's a big buzzword in compliance, isn't it?
It is, and it's fundamental. It's about focusing your resources intelligently where the risk is actually highest rather than trying to boil the ocean.
So how does the MLRO drive that? What are they overseeing?
Things like the big picture enterprise-wide risk assessments, the EWRA, mapping out the firm's overall vulnerability to financial crime.
And customer risk scoring, trying to figure out which clients pose more risk?
Exactly. That helps classify clients so you can apply the right level of scrutiny. It ensures that enhanced due diligence EDD, the deeper checks gets focused on higher risk areas.
Like certain types of clients or products or maybe transactions involving risky countries?
Precisely. Instead of doing deep dives on everyone, you target the effort.
Yeah.
They also need to make sure the tech is working right.
Well, monitoring systems.
Yeah, validating that the transaction monitoring software and the sanctions screening tools, the ones checking against official watch lists, are actually designed well and performing effectively, catching what they should be catching.
And it's not static, right? It has to keep evolving.
Absolutely. They use data analytics, intelligence reports, all sorts of inputs to constantly refine those risk indicators and update the parameters as threats change.
And they work with the business side too, the frontline staff.
Constantly. Coordinating to make sure that day-to-day practices out in the business units align with the firm's overall risk appetite, the level of risk the company is willing to accept.
So this whole risk-based approach, championed by the MLRO, it's about being smarter, more effective with limited resources.
That's the goal. Concentrate your firepower where the exposure seems greatest.
But, I mean, running all this, making these high-stakes calls, it can't be easy. The sources must talk about challenges.
Oh, definitely. They detail quite a few significant hurdles that make the MLRO job incredibly tough.
Like what?
Well, one huge one is that constant tension between strict compliance and commercial pressures. Business wants to move fast, grow, innovate. Compliance can sometimes feel like hitting the brakes.
Yeah, I can see that, especially in fast-moving sectors.
Right. And the threats themselves are changing so rapidly. MLROs are grappling with things like virtual assets, cryptocurrencies,
Yeah.
the complexities of decentralized finance, or DeFi, even AI being used by fraudsters now in really sophisticated ways. Just keeping up is a massive task.
And if you're in a big multinational bank,
Then you've got the added headache of navigating different regulations in every country you operate in.
yeah.
Often they conflict or just have different nuances.
And practically speaking, just dealing with the sheer number of alerts from those monitoring systems.
It's a huge operational challenge. A lot of them turn out to be false positives, right?
Yeah.
Or the initial internal reports might be really vague, low quality.
Meaning lots of investigation time for potentially nothing.
Exactly. And underpinning everything is the need for solid data integrity, making sure everything is documented perfectly, audit ready at a moment's notice.
Because those regulatory reviews or investigations can come calling anytime.
They can.
Oh.
But the sources don't just list problems. They do suggest solutions, or at least ways to cope. Strong governance structures are key.
Meaning clear lines of responsibility, support from the top.
Yes, and giving the MLRO access to the right technology, advanced analytics, can really help sift through data and fostering really clear, open communication across the whole firm.
Makes sense. So given how demanding this all sounds, what about qualifications? Do you need specific degrees or certifications?
It varies. Formal qualifications aren't always mandatory everywhere, but certain professional certifications are, let's say, highly valued. Often expected, really.
What kind of things? The source material mentioned some.
Yeah, they listed examples like the KMS qualification that certified anti-money laundering specialists from ACAMS,
Okay.
also IC diplomas in AML or financial crime compliance, things like the CFE, Certified Fraud Examiner, or CGSS, Certified Global Sanctions Specialist.
So these signal a certain level of expertise.
They do. They show a deep, specific understanding of the field. But it's not like you get one and you're done.
Ongoing learning.
Absolutely crucial. MLROs have to constantly stay updated. New criminal methods, typologies are emerging all the time. Regulatory expectations shift. Best practices in technology and process evolve.
It's a field where you can't stand still.
Not at all. Continuous professional development is essential.
So, bringing this all together, why should someone listening, maybe not even working in finance, care about this MLRO role? Why does it matter to, the average person?
Well, because this role, the MLRO, is really a fundamental part of protecting the financial system we all use. They're a key defense.
They're the individual primarily tasked with safeguarding their firm and, by extension, the wider system from being used for financial crime.
Right. They're trying to stop the bad actors from exploiting the banks, the payment systems, everything we rely on.
And they do that by combining all that technical knowledge, the regulatory expertise, with operational oversight.
And, maybe most importantly, sound judgment under pressure, making those tough calls.
So a really well-supported, competent MLRO function isn't just good for the company, it's essential for building a strong compliance culture throughout the entire organization.
Exactly. And that robust compliance culture ultimately helps protect the integrity of the whole financial system.
Which makes it safer for everyone.
Precisely.
Okay. So, the money laundering reporting officer, a role defined by, wow, immense responsibility, really high stakes, complex challenges daily.
And the absolute need for deep expertise and unwavering integrity. It's a critical job in that global fight against dirty money, often done under pretty intense pressure.
And maybe the final thought for you, the listener, to mull over something that really comes through from the source material. Just how dynamic this role has to be.
Mm.
Think about the speed at which financial crime changes. We mentioned virtual assets, AI-driven fraud. The methods are constantly evolving.
So the MLRO's job can never be static, can it? It's a constant race, really. A constant need to adapt, to learn, just to stay one step ahead or at least keep pace with the criminals.